Assalamu alaikum, all of you. Here is a topic about bias and equivalence. I'm psychologist Ariba Sarwar. Firstly, we discuss about the outline, notions of compatibility, bias meaning and nature, bias equivalence meaning and nature. Firstly, we discuss about the introduction. Bias refer to the nosiness factors that disobedience and validity of instrument. Bias is the validity of instrument applied in different cultures and refer to the different cultures that जो इंस्ट्रूमेंट हम किसी भी कल्चर रिसर्च के लिए यूज करते हैं उसके ऊपर जो बायसेस क्रिएट होते हैं उसको हम जो है वो बायस रेफर टू द वैलिडिटी प्रॉब्लम्स आ जाए उसे हम जो है वो बायस कहलाती है। अब इक्वलेंस जो है वो रेफर करता है टू द कंपैटिबिलिटी ऑफ स्कोर इन अक्रॉस कल्चर्स। इसमें जो है डिफरेंट चैलेंजेस शो होते हैं इन बायस एंड इक्वलेंस में। इसमें जो है वो डिफरेंट कल्चर्स जैसे कि एग्जांपल प्रोवाइड की गई है। सम कंट्रीज यूज किलोमीटर टू measure of the distance, whereas other country use miles, or there is a distance in kilometers and miles cannot be directly compared। ये डायरेक्टली कंपेयर नहीं किए जाते। ये सिंपली फॉर्मूला है जो कि 1 mile is about to 1.6 km, यानी कि 1 mile is about to 1.6 km। These are not the difference between in that, much difference in between that। Convert and one scale to the other. After this conversion, the data are comparable, equivalent, and distance can be compared across countries। Taking this example is listed important two characteristics of bias and equivalence. Firstly, the bias does not refer to the random error. It's only refer to the systematic measurements and anomalies that are expected replicably and repeatedly. Secondly, equivalence is the characteristics of a cross-cultural comparisons that are not instinctive property of instrument. Both kilometers and miles are the adequate unit of measures. Both are used in the different cultures because there are not much difference in between that. This is a comparison of equivalence. Second, instrument choice in cross-cultural studies. Instrument is the most important thing in this cross-cultural research. So there is an important question to consider in the initial state of project, your choice of instrument. We argue that there are three options in which the Harkins when Vigever, Johnson and Wendy Vigever 2003 and Wendy Vigever and Link 1997. There are three important projects which are used to choose of the instrument of cross-cultural psychology, cross-cultural research, and cross-cultural studies. First is the adoption. The first option is adoption, amount to clause translation of instruments in the target language. टारगेटेड लैंग्वेज के लिए जो हम ट्रांसलेशन इंस्ट्रूमेंट यूज करते हैं वो फर्स्ट अडॉप्शन होती है क्रॉस कल्चरल रिसर्च के इंस्ट्रूमेंट चॉइस में। दिस ऑप्शन इज मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट एंड फ्रीक्वेंट। ये जो है मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट एंड फ्रीक्वेंट एम्पिरिकल रिसर्च बिकॉज इट इज अ सिंपल इम्प्लीमेंट, cheap, high focus, and high face validity. These are referred to the high validity because the equivalence is equivalence and bias and equivalence is bias is reference to the validity and equivalence is refers to the comparison. So this is high face validity of adoption and retrain the comparison score between obtain the instrument across the translation. Adopting instrument can be quick and dirty solution, यानी कि क्विक सोल्यूशन हो सकता है, डर्टी सोल्यूशन हो सकता है। इसमें जो है लिमिटेशंस ऑफ आइटम्स एंड स्कोर आर टारगेट लैंग्वेजेस हैव अ एडिक्वेट कवरेज ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्टेड मेजर्ड एडिक्वेट कवरेज जो है वो अडॉप्शन के फर्स्ट जो ऑप्शन है अडॉप्शन से उससे काफी इजी हो जाता है। ओवर second, labeled adaptation. Adaptation is the amount of combination of clause transition in which the change of other stimuli when a close translation would be inadequate for linguistics, cultural, psychodynamic reasons. These are most important in the cross-cultural because the adaptation is become popular and generic term of translation in process of psychological translation. These are given by the Hambleton, Marden, Miranda, and Spielberger in 2005. Second is assembly. Third is assembly. The third option is called assembly. It involves completion of a new instrument. It is only choice that remain if adopting an adaptation is an instrument will not be produced instrument with the satisfied linguistic. अगर साइकोलॉजिकल और साइकोडायनामिक जो है वो एक्यूरेसी नहीं आ रही किसी भी तरह से इक्विवेलेंस बायस एंड इक्विवेलेंस के कंपैरिजन और उसकी वैलिडिटी में, देन वी यूज द असेंबली ऑप्शन फॉर द न्यूमेरिकल कंपैरिजन ऑफ स्कोर अक्रॉस डिफरेंट कल्चर्स. Selection criteria. Depending on the instrument and target culture, any of the three option, adaptation, and assembly may be best choice. If the aim is to minimize, if हमारा aim है कि हम maximize कर सकें अपनी opportunities को, अपनी statistical comparison को अपनी study में, तो हम फिर simple choice choose करते हैं adoption को. If the aim is to maximize the ecological validity of instrument, अगर हम ecological जो है वो validity of instrument use करें, then we consider the adequate measurement of construct target in adaptation and or assembly preferable. Both is important in ecological validity. Statistical tools such as item response theory and structure equivalence modeling can be deal with the instrument of that are not compatibly identical across cultures. ये विविच लिंग एंड वेंडी की जो है एक 1997 की रिसर्च में उन्होंने ये एक्सप्लेनेशन प्रोवाइड की थी अबाउट द सिलेक्शन इन क्राइटेरिया. नेक्स्ट इज द टेक्सोनॉमी ऑफ बायस. टेक्सोनॉमी ऑफ बायस occur when scores difference are indicated and particular construct. इसमें do not corresponding differences underlying the trait of validity ability. Corresponding meaning is in practice that response in one culture representing a target construct and response in another culture are due to other construct. यानी कि that is the examples are provided that if consciousness are in one culture and in the second culture a combination of consciousness and social desirability. Both are different construct in the research and these are the different things in our different cultures. So this is the bias can we create in this culture. We use the three depending bias and the invalidity comes from the theoretical construct. Measurement instruments are specific items. Three types are called the construct bias, the method bias, and the items bias. Because the both in the different cultures and different cultures in which we are researching about the comparison and validity, we have to look about the three bias: construct bias, method bias, and item bias. Construct bias is not identical across cultures. ये एक ऐसी measurement है जो कि identical नहीं है in cultures. It can occur when there is only a partial overlap in the definition of construct cross culture. If minimal overlap of partial overlap हो, तो ये जो है वो cross cultures में जो है वो occur होती है. It is when not all relevant behavior associated with the construct present in properly sampled. For example, this is a happiness has a different focus in Western and non-Western countries. According to Euclid, in the northern countries, happiness is the personal achievement, maximizing positive effect experience. Whereas in the Eastern culture, happiness is the interpersonal connectedness, balanced experience of positive and negative effects. There are two different comparison constructs are built in this research, because in the American culture, North American culture, achievements are the most important for the happiness, and in the North American culture, Asian culture, there is a two things: positive and negative effects. Both positive negative effects of balanced experiences are the sign of happiness. Next, there is a method bias. Method bias is a generic nausea factors driving from a sampling, structure, features, instrument, administrations, processes. There is a four and other biases in the method bias: sample bias, instrument bias, response styles, and administration bias. Firstly, we discuss sample bias. Sample bias is a incompatibility samples due to the cross-cultural variation in sample characteristics bearing the target measures, confounding across culture, different in education levels. There is an example about the educational levels. We are using the testing variations in urban and rural residency. Affiliation to religion groups. The idea situation is a randomly sample culturally representative responded. Sometimes we are used the college population for our research. In the college education, the assumptions may be invalid because the enrollment rates in development and developing countries differ significantly. It can induce selection bias in the sampling progress, because in the college population, there is a different people from different cities, different places, and different cultures. That makes a bias in the sample. Next is the instrument bias. Instrument bias involves problems deriving from instrument characteristics such as stimulus familiarities in the cognitive and educational tests. In the response of personality and attitude interventors culture tend to have different level of familiarity and stimulus materials. In this, the different things are occur in the instrument bias because we are using one instrument in different cultures. That is become invalid for that, because if we are using using one scale in our population of rural system, and also this scale are used in a urban population, that cause a instrument bias. Both of the scores are not compared and apply equally. That makes too much differences in that. Response style. Response style is referred to systematic tendency to use certain categories of the answering scale on the same biases other than the target construct. Response styles is the problem is the category of answering scale, because the different peoples or in a different culture in a different places have a different style of response. In accuracies, the frequently endorsed by people with low socioeconomic status from collectivism cultures. Some people's advocacies are tendencies to agree rather than disagree to propositions in general. Some people give the most rare answers in the questions. Some people not give too much importance to the questions. they randomly answer the questions. That makes the response styles or your response bias in the research. Administration bias. A final type of method bias is administration bias. This type of bias can come from administration conditions. Example, data collection problem, moods problem, class size problem, MBS जो है प्रॉब्लम, इंस्ट्रक्शंस का प्रॉब्लम आ जाना, इंटरेक्शन बिटवीन एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन एंड रिस्पोंडेंट, यानी कि जो हम स्केल फिल करवा रहे हैं किसी से और फिर जो सामने वाला पर्सन है उसको हमारी जो इंस्ट्रक्शंस हैं वो समझ नहीं आ रही, दैट मेक्स द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन बायस, इन विच द कम्युनिकेशन प्रॉब्लम, लैंग्वेज डिफरेंसेस, कुछ taboos problems are there, depending on the construct of an interest problem, data collect mood problem, paper and pencil mood versus online versus, यानी कि if the person if one person is filling the scale by pen and paper and one person is filling the scale by online survey, both have shown the differential disability, social desirability. Both are give different attention to the questions and answer them. This is called the administration biased. Item biased. An item bias is when it has a different psychological meaning across cultures. More more precisely an item of a scale. Example, measuring anxiety is said to be biased if person with the same trait but coming from different cultures. If we are choosing two persons from different cultures and we are measuring over anxiety on them, we have a different result or different translation or different things we can occur from the two scale, one scale and two persons. This is the item bias. Item bias is a rise from poor translation, incomparative, inapplicability. Item contents are different cultures. Triggers additional traits or have words 7 he and when divisions, bias and equivalence with ambiguous connotations. In this stuff we are using different scales in a different places. We are using an anxiety scale, mostly the adult persons, because the anxiety is much refer और much जो है वो जो बहुत ज्यादा दूसरे लोगों के साथ अटैच करती है वो एडल्ट लेवल में करती है. तो हम जो है अगर वो दो डिफरेंट कल्चर के लोगों से एक सेम स्केल फिल करवा रहे हैं तो फिर उसमें हमारा जो है आइटम बाइस आना लाजमी है. Taxonomy of equivalence. The taxonomy of bias presented in the previous section details with the systematic error in a cross-culture studies. The taxonomy of equivalence presented below address the implications of bias on the comparability of construct and scores. Because equivalence are referred to the construct of scores, comparability of construct of scores. Equivalence is related to the measurement of a score obtained by the cultural groups can be compared. A hierarchical classification, equivalence, distinguishing construct equivalence, measured unit equivalence, and score, full score equivalence are the types of equivalence. Firstly, we discuss about the construct equivalence. There is a construct instance in a cross-culture comparison, some theoretical construct of measured in cultures. Without construct equivalence, there is a no bias from any cross-cultural comparisons. Because if the scores are not different in our researches, there is a no bias in the research, and most equivalence is the most important for the knowledge of bias. Research needs to explore the structure and construct of adequacy of sampled item. When a construct does not have the same measuring score, the culture in the study research is incompetence, conceptualization, or compare the equivalent subfactors. If our scores are not same in the research. The construct bias are the item bias, the administration bias, the response bias, all are occur in our research. The equivalence can make this. Measurement unit equivalence. Measurement unit equivalence are means that measure of interval and ratio levels. In cross-cultural research, we have a challenges about the simple research and also the interval and ratio researches. Measurement unit, but different origins. With metric equivalence score can be compared within cultural groups. Example, if a male and female differences can be tested in each group. A mean pattern of correlation across cultures are used. The score cannot be compared directly across the group. A case in point is the distance being measured by kilometers or by miles. These are the things. One is a ratio and one is a number. Because 1 kilometer, 1 mile is equals to 1.6 kilometers. There is a two things, intervals and ratios. These are the things of compared directly, and both are used in the different cultures. Without so can distances measured by miles, yet without converting the two measurements to the same origins. A valid cross-group comparison is impossible. Last is the full score equivalence, and scalar equivalence. Scalar equivalence is the highest level of equivalence, implies by the scale of measurements, units, and origins. In this case, we are score the obtained bias free and thus can be compared directly. अगर biased free कोई research हो तो उसमें हम जो है वो equivalence को comparatively जो है वो directly compared कर सकते हैं in full equivalence of scalar equivalence के अंदर. इसमें जो analysis variance करता है वो test to examine the cross culture differences in appropriate way. The only for this level of equivalence. It should be noted that in order to achieve construct equivalence, construct bias should be addressed. Method and item bias are not influence construct equivalence, but they jeopardize provide. These are the lecture about bias and equivalence. I hope you will learn and a lot from this. If you have any query, then mention in the comment. Thank you so much.